Mary, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rob. And thanks to Karen as well for the invitation and for hosting this exciting special issue preview for Humboldt Day. Let me just share my screen here for you all. There we go. So I'm going to preview for you today our upcoming special issue for Frontiers of Biogeography on transboundary conservation under climate change, which will be the first issue of next year, as Rob mentioned. That's 14.1. And this topic I feel is especially apropos for Humboldt Day, Humboldt Week that we are celebrating, because as you all probably know, Alexander von Humboldt was a huge advocate for international scientific collaboration. And it has been said that he was the first person to describe the phenomenon and cause of human-induced climate change in 1800. Feel free to correct me in the comments if I have that wrong. So today I'll tell you a little bit first about a collaborative project that the three of us as co-editors did together that inspired this special issue, and then I'll give a preview of some of the papers that are already out online and that are in the pipeline to come out soon. But I'll introduce the three of us first. So I am the Director of Biodiversity Informatics Research at the Center for Biodiversity and Conservation at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, where I am not currently, but that is my background. My co-editor, Ming Le, is Faculty of Environmental Science at Vietnam National University in Hanoi, and he's also affiliated with the Central Institute of Natural Resources and Environmental Studies there. And Ming Su is from the College of Geography and Environmental Science at Hainan University in Kaifeng, China. And he's also affiliated with the Center for Remote Sensing and Spatial Analysis at Rutgers in New Jersey. And the three of us got together because we were quite concerned about something that I think all of us are aware of, which is that biodiversity is undergoing dramatic loss on the global level. And biodiversity is essential to human health and well-being. And so its loss is of great concern to us. And a complex and challenging threat to biodiversity is climate change, which is causing major shifts in biological communities and resources as novel climates appear and major biomes are redistributed. And there's an urgent need for more information on how climate change may or is already affecting the distributions of key endangered species and habitats to better inform conservation action planning, especially in areas where there may be limited capacity or resources for management, such as Southeast Asia, which is a focus of research for the three co-editors. Importantly, the changes in habitats that may occur may result in migration of species across borders, meaning that nations will need to cooperate to effectively manage the most threatened species and habitats. And the three of us, the co-editors, we recently led a project together on this topic with support from the Prince Albert II Monaco Foundation, as well as Fulbright, to try to understand probabilities of risk from climate change for a suite of ecologically and culturally important species that live particularly in the Sino-Vietnamese border area here to inform protected area and species monitoring plans into the future. And this is a photo of us from a kickoff workshop for this project, which was in Hanoi, Vietnam in 2018, pre-pandemic, obviously. And since they can't join me for this presentation today, I really wanted to show a photo of the two of them. And so in addition to the research we were doing, over the course of the project, we had a series of training workshops for conservation practitioners, researchers, and students from a wide range of East, South, and Southeast Asian countries, where they learned and applied machine learning-based tools for modeling species distributions under climate change into their work. And many of our participants in these workshops were able to complete quite robust models for their species of interest. And we worked with them to finalize their results and then present them at a follow-up symposium that we hosted in China in 2019. And that was a chance for them to get additional feedback on results, learn from global experts on transboundary conservation, and get a better sense of how models had application to real conservation decision-making issues on the ground and across borders. And indeed, these events were the inspiration for many, though not all, of the special issue papers. But I do want to highlight one of my favorite ones first. This paper was submitted for the issue, and it did come out of our training workshop and symposium. And it's about one of the most endangered apes in the world, the Calveit Gibbon. This critically endangered species is found in only one small forest patch that happens to be right on the border between Vietnam and China. And the distribution model projections for the species, which I'm not showing here because they're still in press, but you can see them soon on the website. The model projections confirm that it's highly likely that historically the species had a much wider range, that a lot more habitats are probably suitable for them. And provide some good news, which is that the small forest patch they're in now is likely to remain suitable into the future, even under a wide range of potential climate change scenarios. And the authors make some recommendations to support current plans to reestablish another population of this species in a nearby forest patch. And those plans are being led by Fauna and Flora International in Vietnam. And I'm happy also to say that the authorship of this paper reflects a sense of cross-border and cross-sector collaboration. The authorship includes scientists, conservation practitioners, and protected area staff from both sides of the border. Another paper I wanted to highlight for you is one that is already published online as well, that I led. And this one also includes diverse authorship, demonstrating a collaboration between Vietnamese, Chinese, and American authors. This paper is about the Francois Langer, and it illustrates another reason for the importance of these kinds of studies, which is the complex geology of many border regions. So this is what a limestone karst forest looks like if you're not familiar. This is a forest on top of limestone. And this is where Francois langurs live, as well as many other limestone adapted langurs like the catbot langer, which I'm actually showing here. And climate change is of particular concern to species like these that seem to be quite dependent on a specific and unique habitat. And karst limestone forests, they have calcium-rich and very acidic soil, so there is concern that such species may be too specialized to survive well elsewhere. And we used machine learning-based species distribution models to identify what parts of their range are expected to be more exposed to changes in climate, using projections based on a range of IPCC climate change scenarios. And with the models, we show that karst geology is important and it changes predictions quite a bit, and thus needs to be considered very carefully in conservation plans. And this is probably important for most species that are dependent on limestone karst. Some other papers in the issue also convey the importance of looking at a range of abiotic factors beyond just climate in model training. This is the beautiful Lichtenfelder's tiger gecko. What a lovely animal. And this paper is out online. You can find it on the journal's website. And the authors here show the importance of including vegetation cover for understanding where tiger geckos are. And they identified refugia across the Vietnam-China border that are likely to have climatic stability into the future for this highly endangered species. Another paper that's already out online early on a range of freshwater turtles, though I'm showing the Asian giant softshell here because it's my favorite. This paper demonstrated how overlaying water surface coverage with the distribution models really changed assessments of the future effectiveness of protected areas for preserving a range of endangered freshwater turtles, which is quite important for forward-thinking protected area planning for these endangered species. Here's another one that is also already out online. This paper is about Magnolia grandis, one of the world's most threatened trees. There's a total population of fewer than 120 adult trees. And this paper collaborates with the Center for Plant Conservation and Fauna and Flora International in Vietnam to model the species and make recommendations to support plans for reestablishment of additional populations to expand current efforts for this endangered species. These models were quite interesting because they predict a quite drastic shift in the centroid of suitable habitat. And the models also kind of went against some regional trends that we might expect. So we also, for this species, point out the need for long-term ecological research that will establish fine scale habitat preferences and microclimatic needs that can help us better understand these trends at a more regional level, and to help improve model projections for the purpose of more fine scale adaptive conservation management for this highly endangered species in the future. So finally, I want to point out that, as Rob mentioned, most of the papers in this special issue help to promote the use of open source software and scripts to perform species distribution models, especially machine learning based correlative ones, which are the most common and often the most accessible for a wide range of data types and species. And indeed, the development of these free and open tools has led to an explosion in the use of these kinds of models for conservation applications, which is not all good news because it's quite easy to misuse these methods, and there's a potential for false precision. So a key part of the work of advancing software tools is also training to build capacity for expertise and best practices of this important research arena, because the stakes are high. Biodiversity is being lost at a huge rate. So my institution hosts the most widely used software tool for this work, Maxent, which you might be familiar with. And we do include some tutorials and links to other tools to help everybody follow best practices. And I encourage you to check it out if you're interested in learning more about these approaches. And specifically in terms of some best practices, the three co-editors have a commentary paper that will accompany this special issue. And we argue that conservation practitioner modeler capacity must be elevated for folks to more easily implement best practices when using SDMs for conservation across borders. And these practices include avoiding overcomplexity of the models, making sure you address input data bias, and account for uncertainty in model extrapolation and projection. And all of these are especially important because of an application to climate change, where model extrapolation into potentially novel climates is highly likely to be necessary. We also argue for the importance of models to be collaboratively developed at the outset with all of the stakeholders for whom the model will be relevant. And I'm happy to say that the authorship pattern of a lot of our special issue papers do reflect this as well. Cross-sector, cross-border authorship groups are a strength of this issue for sure. And I think the special issue also shows that when used in combination with other information, when accounting for bias and uncertainty, conservation biogeography methods and tools hold great promise to help conservation managers be forward-thinking about the possibility of endangered species moving around and helping to prepare for coordinated transboundary management into the future. And I wanted to end by noting that borders often exemplify complex sociopolitical contexts, complex histories between countries, and conservation scientists, practitioners, managers, and biogeographers, we have an obligation to understand what those contexts are, how they relate to our work, and the goals of conservation. And as global changes, including climate change, continue, we will have to increasingly work across borders to achieve biodiversity conservation goals and to do better science. And luckily, we also know that scientists like Alexander von Humboldt can sometimes build bridges between societies where more official relationships may be difficult. And through approaches like the ones we demonstrate in the special issue, we hope to model ways to strengthen interactions and partnerships between scientific and diplomatic communities towards more positive biodiversity outcomes into the future under climate change. So with that, I'd like to thank the journal again, and especially Rob and Karen for all your support for the special issue, my co-editors, Ming and Ming, and all of the special issue authors who contributed, and the funders who helped support both our related research and software tool development. And especially thanks to everyone who participated in the workshops and the symposium that inspired this special issue, which benefited from the support, again, of the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation. So thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the special issue. I think I can take some questions now. Oh, I see a question from Rob. Would you like to say the question yourself, Rob?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. It really, you know, I've been reading these papers as they come through the journal, but it really brings it to life to hear somebody talking about them and putting them together. So my question, which seems to have just disappeared from my screen, it's basically, can you, you said that the workshopping process is sort of integral to success here. Like, could you just give us an example of, maybe a concrete action or at least some steps towards concrete actions of more effective transboundary cooperation arising through this process that you've engaged in?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the shining examples, again, is the Calveit Gibbon, which I talked about first. And I think one of the reasons that they have been so successful is that they have a formal memorandum of understanding between the local governments on either side of the border where this animal lives. And through that memorandum, they have a mechanism to do joint monitoring. They keep their efforts separate, but they're able to share and do monitoring together. And the partnership was already in place such that when we got together and tried to bring all the data together to run a model, we had all the information we needed, and we knew that from the outset. So they're really a shining example. And it's important to note that it took many years for their agreement to get into place. In some cases, with some of the special issue species, some of those species are farther along than others in terms of having some kind of formal agreement in place for cooperation. But just starting it is an excellent first step. We can always rerun the model when we have more data from all over the range. But just getting it started, just beginning to say, let's have a formal memorandum, even if it takes years to come together, it signals a willingness that is a really good sign to start the process moving forward.
Thanks. If I can just ask a follow-up about that? I mean, you've touched on it, but the thing with species distribution models, particularly for rare species, is that we typically don't have very many data points for them. And one of the things that comes up time and again in review process is how robust are these models? How sensitive are they? I mean, can you just comment a little bit on how robust the models are to internal processes of checking, but also whether, in a sense, that is the critical point. I mean, it may be the scientific frame of reference, but perhaps it's as important as anything that they provide a vehicle focusing on the distributions, making some predictions about where the species should be found that can guide future research, and that they should be seen as a first approximation on which we then build.
Yes, this is a really important point, and something I that was really instilled in me by one of my postdoctoral advisors, Richard Pearson, who I should also add in the acknowledgements for instilling in me how important it is to treat these projections as trends. So, a vehicle for getting folks in the room saying, listen, these are the various scenarios that could happen, but we don't really know what's going to happen into the future. We can approximate to some extent the uncertainty we have about the current projections today. We can do ground truthing. We can find independent validation points to get a sense of the uncertainty in today's prediction, but we can't really do that for the future, can we? So it does really help to have some scenarios, to have some participatory engagement in thinking through the scenarios and what they mean, so that we are communicating the uncertainty well, but also making space for people to come together and make a plan, which is, the most important thing. Yeah.
Thanks very much. And again, I don't see any other hands going up.
There is a question from Susan Starrett in the chat. She says,
go with that,
yeah. She says, I enjoyed your talk. I'm interested in your concern about how easy it is to misuse these models and what to do as a check on that. Can you suggest any resources?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this question. Well, we will talk about it a little bit in one of the papers in this special issue, some guidance, but I can also point out to emerging best practice standards that are coming out for this field. So Miguel Arujo led a paper recently on best practices and how to kind of score your model and the methods that you've used to make sure that you are using best practices, especially when thinking about biodiversity monitoring and assessments as a result of your models. And Helen Sofauer also put together some really great best practice standards about using these models for conservation as well. And we do cite and reference those papers in the commentary that's coming out as well. So there's an emerging kind of consensus that will be available, and some more accessible guidance, I think, to how to use those standards in practice. Stay tuned. I think we're going to be working on some software and tools to help with that in the future. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks very much. Do we have any other quick questions? If not, I've got one more.
Just a thank you from Susan, and also from Amjad Rahman, who says very brief and informative.
Okay, so this is just a real quick question, but concerns ex situ conservation efforts. So Magnolia grandis is widely grown. Are there any problems in using ex situ collections of that species to reintroduce into the wild?
This is a really great question. One of our co-authors on the paper about Magnolia grandis leads a wide range of these efforts for the Center for Plant Conservation Vietnam, and that is Hugh Nguyen. And he also leads and coordinates with Fauna and Flora International, community monitoring of wild populations. But as a part of that exchange, a lot of folks use Magnolia grandis for shade in cardamom plantations, for example. So it has value in a range of ways. And they seem to have pretty good success in nursery cultivation and in making sure there is community monitoring after planting. And we include some details of recent success by Fauna and Flora International from the co-author Kong in the paper. But that's one reason why we point to the need to understand microclimate better moving forward, and more fine scale understanding, because there isn't really long-term microclimate fine scale monitoring of these things. And the trends that we're seeing from kind of coarser scale species distribution models may not tell us everything that we need to know about what might be successful moving forward. So that's extremely important, and something that we do call for from our paper. Yeah, thank you for asking.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mary. I think we'll have to leave the Transboundary Conservation special issue at that point, because we have got one more talk. But as Mary has said, several papers are out already at Frontiers of Biogeography, so you can read them already in the press section. And do watch out for the compiled issue, which will be in the March issue of the journal. So thank you very much indeed. Now we're going to move to the final special issue. And Ole Vetas unfortunately couldn't be with us live today. So what he's done is recorded his introduction to the elevation gradients special issue, and we're about to play that back for you now. It lasts about 6 minutes, I think. And at the end of that, Karen and I will still be here to answer any questions you might have, either about that issue, the special issue, or about the call for papers for the citizen science biogeography issue, or just any queries you've got about Frontiers of Biogeography. And then we'll wrap up by the hour. So I see a hand up. Is that from Lucille?
Hi, yeah, I think so. I have a question for both you, Robert, and Mary, because Ole is not here, unfortunately, but I was curious to hear about what was your journey to become involved, to work with Frontiers, and to work on a special issue?
What was my journey? I was, I think, president of the society when we decided to turn it from a newsletter into a journal. So I've been involved in Frontiers in a way from the beginning, but from a distance. And so I was intrigued to have a go at sort of running the journal for a while, when Joachim Hortau decided he needed to take a break from it for a while and go on to do other things. And this particular special issue really came about through Mary approaching us. So Mary, perhaps you'd like to comment about how you came to choose the journal.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I first found out about the journal actually through my postdoctoral advisor, Richard Pearson, who I mentioned before, and he suggested we submit a paper to Frontiers. I think it was soon after that it became a journal, many years ago. That was 2012 or 2013 or something. So I was aware of the journal since then. And the paper I published way back then was about applying species distribution models to conservation under climate change. And the journal was very, embraced this kind of in between of conservation biogeography, where it's both research and applied. And I really appreciated that back at that time when I was early career and feeling, welcomed to the journal with that focus. And so I thought of the journal again for this special issue, again, because it's sort of research and applied. It's very much conservation biogeography. And I knew that they would help us welcome very diverse authorship, including international authors and authors from different sectors, and really working with them to improve their papers to be suitable for the journal. So felt like exactly the right fit. And I was really pleased when Rob accepted our proposal for a special issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think for all of us involved in it, the idea of trying to provide an easy, supportive route to publication, where you don't have that uncertainty about will I get faced with a $1,500 bill for publication at the end of it? If you don't have the funds, it's really helpful to know that you can publish here without charge. And if you are contributing to the cost, it is a really cut price system. So, we want to be doing something for the community of biogeographers. and that's very much in line with the goals of the International Biogeography Society, which is trying to just make the subject grow and bring people together internationally to do biogeographical science, preferably at least some of it relevant to solving real world problems.
We have
The open access aspect was also very important to us. So I want to highlight that as well. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank our speakers, thank Olivetas and Mary, and of course through you, Mary, your colleagues who put the special issue together, Ming and Min, have done a fantastic job. It's well on its way, and we look forward to seeing the full special issue out soon. And as I said earlier, we'll be putting the call for papers for the Citizen Science Biogeography special issue up in the next few days. So if anyone is interested, please do get in contact. I think particularly if you're interested in writing a sort of perspective or review paper, it's worth just sending a query in advance, making sure we don't end up with sort of duplicate efforts. Empirical papers, that's far less likely to happen, of course. So we welcome any queries and expressions of interest on that. So thank you very much, Mary, Ole, and of course, Karen. Thanks very much for organizing the session this afternoon or this morning, depending where you are.
And my thanks as well to both Rob and Mary for doing a very informative session. Thank you.
So, bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.